Okay, it is 7 o'clock, and we'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for taking your time to join us this evening. On behalf of the leadership team here at His Sign, we truly appreciate you being here. We know your time is valuable and your participation matters. Because we now support so many multiple time zones, we chose a time intended to work for as many of you as possible. My name is Melanie Blue, and I'll be serving as your moderator this evening. My role is just to guide the discussion, help keep us on time, and ensure we create a space for meaningful dialogue. Tonight's town hall was designed with intention. Over the past several months, we've received feedback through various channels, emails, conversations, letters, and messages, and we're grateful for that feedback. It reflects engagement, care, and a shared investment in the work that we do. So before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge and sincerely thank our ASL interpreter team who are supporting this event tonight. We're grateful for your professionalism and the critical role you play, not just this evening, but every day. We have our ASL interpreters spotlighted so that everyone can clearly see them throughout the session. Just a few housekeeping notes before we begin. To help us keep the conversation organized and make the best use of our time together, we ask that everyone remain muted unless invited to speak. This will ensure we can move through the agenda clearly and address as many questions as possible. Questions will be moderated and addressed in an organized manner. This session is being recorded and we'll share access afterwards, but we're grateful you chose to join live tonight. If you experience any technical issues, please use the chat feature to send a private message to our technical support. Or if you need general assistance during the session, event support will be happy to help. With that, I'd like to turn things over to our CEO, Brian Hamrick, to begin our discussion.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Melanie, and everybody else for being here. As everybody on the His Sign team knows, I like telling stories. So I want to talk to you tonight a little bit about why we're here, what we're doing, and why we're doing it in a story format. Not going to go back to birth, but I will talk about that at some point. But back in 2010, my wife Christina and I reached the decision to start His Sign. And that full story is on the website, so you can check that out sometime. At that time, Christina knew every single interpreter that worked at His Sign. And at that time, we didn't even know what CART was. It wasn't even in our vocabulary. Tonight for this meeting, we had over 50 people sign up to attend, almost as many as our whole ASL interpreter pool was back in 2010. Back then, when we signed up someone to be a vendor for us, Christina would spend an hour or two talking to them if she didn't know them, and that was few and far between. I wish things were different, but that's the challenge with success. Things change. So my intention today is to take this opportunity for each of you to learn a little bit more about who we are at His Sign, to provide you with some transparency, and hopefully to create and inform you of some connection points you may not have been aware of. We've always sought out feedback, and recently we've been blessed to receive some feedback that highlighted opportunities for improvement. And I say blessed because the old adage, you can't fix it if you don't know it's broken, is something that I use very often. And as everyone at His Sign knows, it's the way that I manage. The purpose of today's town hall is threefold. One is to acknowledge and address as many of your concerns as we're able to in our limited time. Number two, to share context around the growth we've experienced and the operational challenges that have resulted. And three, to talk about what we're doing to address our growth and operational challenges and how we'd like to move forward with all of you. As Melanie mentioned, we have a slotted time to answer questions. And if you have any more questions, go ahead and put them in there. We may or may not be able to get to them today, but please don't stop asking questions. At this time, I'd like to give you a little context around His Sign's growth over the past 2 years. Matt and Amber are going to also touch on this. I say 2 years because this period of time is significant, and I'm certain you'll understand why by the time that I finish. Back in 2024, things at His Sign were humming along just fine. We'd hit 6,000 hours of services in a month for the first time, and more growth was on the horizon. Then, one morning, early in the year, we weren't able to access ERSP, our scheduling system. During the next 7 weeks, we didn't have access to ERSP, nor the data that we had in the system other than what we saved offline. During those 7 weeks, the efforts of the A team, for those of you that don't know, the accessibility team managed by Amber Haynes, as well as the rest of the His Sign team, were nothing less than heroic. Schedules were rebuilt outside of the scheduling system, assignments were made, and we operated as well as could be expected. We made it through that time, and by the end of April 2024, we made the decision to migrate to USCHED, our current scheduling system. The next 6 months were a tough time for every one of us at His Sign. Long days and nights, doing not only our day-to-day work, but getting ready for the migration, thinking that we'd make a mistake, overnights. It was a tough time. On November 1st of 2024, we went live on USCHED. We then ended November, our first full month of USCHED, with over 7,000 hours of service, a new record. Before I continue, I want to give you a little bit of a perspective of what that means. From January to November of 2024, we'd grown 17%. Our staffing on the A team remained flat. We've been working on the migration, and we've been operating in a mirror mode, scheduling on both ERSP and USCHED for a month. To say that the A team and His Sign were busy would be an understatement. 4 months later, in March of 2025, we hit 9,000 hours in a month for the first time. 7 months later, in October of 2025, we hit 10,000 hours in a month. And in November, the very next month, we had over 12,000 hours in a month, 100% growth. But the growth wasn't done. 2 months ago in December, we had over 15,000 hours of service, 150% growth in 2 years. And that's worth repeating. We grew 150% in 2 years, from 6,000 hours a month to 15. What I haven't told you about that time is that we handled that 150% growth with a 3-scheduler team on the A team, the same number that we'd had 2 years ago. Additionally, that team was juggling 3 hiring attempts, as well as all their other day-to-day. Earlier, I'd mentioned the heroic efforts of the A team. Well, those heroic efforts continue today. But so you get the full picture, that A team is supported by every one of us here that work at His Sign. Everyone you see on this meeting with His behind their names contributed in one way or another if they were at His Sign during the past 2 years. And we expect the same thing from our new hires. That was the pain, and now the gain. Every January, we hold a State of the Union meeting where we take a look back and consider how to move forward. Holding this town hall was one of the things we considered and acted upon when the His Sign management team met last fall and began preparing for 2026. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to the members of the His Sign management team. Just so you know, His Sign could not function without each of them. Matt Peeve, our COO, will be speaking in a few minutes. Eileen Brenneman is our VP of Human Resources, and Jen Ilgenfritz is our VP of Finance. Their opinions are sought out and considered carefully, and it is just an amazing thing to have them to work with because they bring so much to the table, and I'm eternally grateful to each of them. So now back to my story. As we considered our plans for 2026, we considered our challenges and the gaps that could be filled to mitigate them. We'd already known that we needed to strengthen the A team by hiring, and Amber will speak to that in a moment. Matt will also speak to another hire, but I'd like to introduce a hire that improves our ability to support you, our ASL interpreters and CART providers. As part of our commitment to improving communication and strengthening relationships, I'm excited to formally introduce all of you to Matthew Hemrick. Matthew joined his sign on January 5th as our service provider liaison. Matthew brings extensive experience as an ASL interpreter and understands firsthand the realities of the work of an interpreter. His role is going to be focused on bridging gaps, improving communication with you, our service providers, and ensuring that your perspective remains central in our decision making. And in case you're wondering about the resemblance, yes, he's my son. Another way that we're working to strengthen our relationship with you and to improve communication is through a new tool that we've developed and you've used if you asked a question, our Ask His Sign form on our website. You'll find a link to the Ask His Sign form under the service provider heading on our website. Regardless of what we do, His Sign can only be as successful and strong as our relationship is with you, our service providers. A partnership with you was our business model when we started back in 2010. It was our business model as we worked with you through COVID, and it remains our business model today. It is a partnership that requires both His Sign and you to establish a give and take that benefits both sides, and it will fail if one side benefits at the loss of the other. We place great value on your praise and always consider your concerns. And while we may not always respond as quickly as you expect or in a way you'd like, I want to be very clear. Your voices are heard and they matter and they are considered. So thank you for taking the time to let us know your thoughts. I look forward to a continued relationship where we all thrive together. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian, for that message and for setting the tone for this evening. Next, I'd like to introduce Matt Peeve, our Chief Operating Officer, who will share more about our operational landscape, customer demand, and how we're navigating that growth. Matt?
Thank you, Melanie, and good evening, everyone. For those of you I haven't had the opportunity to work with yet, my name is Matt Peeve, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at His Sign. I've been with the company for over 10 years, and like many others on the team, I've had the opportunity to wear a variety of hats along the way. I want to start by expressing my appreciation for your continued support and flexibility as we navigate a period of rapid growth and change. Over the past year, we've expanded our customer base, added multi-location and high-volume customers, seen a higher percentage of last-minute requests, and seen an increased demand for virtual services. The growth is positive, but growth without structure creates strain, particularly in balancing customer expectations with provider availability and preferences. So our focus has been on building operational structure that supports both customers and service providers. There are things that are working well. For example, as Brian mentioned, we've been on USCED for over a year and a half, and it has resulted in faster assignment creation, improved availability tracking, broader, more equitable broadcast distribution, reduced manual scheduling errors, and better reporting data. Before USCED, many processes were manual. That limited scalability and increased inconsistencies. With USCED, we now have visibility into trends that we did not previously have, and that data is guiding our decisions. With this enhanced tracking, we've been able to identify trends. One trend that I want to take the opportunity to address is assignment givebacks. This is when a service provider is confirmed for an assignment and gives it back, sometimes with very short notice. To give you some context, in January alone this year, we tracked 75 assignment givebacks in USCED, and this is trending even higher for the month of February. We understand that life happens, emergencies come up, illness, family responsibilities, and unforeseen circumstances are very real, and we absolutely acknowledge that. However, there are operational impacts when a give back is received. It creates immediate pressure on our accessibility team who must work to rebroadcast and reach out to get a replacement. Sometimes they're successful, other times the assignment may go unfilled, which means a deaf consumer does not receive communication access. This affects our customers' confidence in us as a provider. High volume accounts, this triggers performance reviews that adversely impact our reputation. Some cases, it risks damaging long-term customer relationships, which ultimately affects the volume and quality of work available to all providers. Customers measure us on reliability. If confirmed assignments are frequently given back, customers may reduce volume, shift to other agencies, or require stricter confirmation timelines. Again, we fully acknowledge that emergencies happen, illness happens, but what we are asking for is intentional commitment at the point of confirmation. Before accepting an assignment, we ask that you please confirm your availability confidently. Travel time, consider fatigue and personal limitations, consider competing commitments. In those rare occasions where there is an emergency that comes up, we ask that you please communicate as early as possible with the accessibility team. Do note, it's not about blame, it's about sustainability. Reliability protects volume, that volume protects opportunity. Opportunity protects income stability for you, our service providers. We're sharing this because reliability protects access for consumers and stability for providers, and we want to solve it together. Internally, we are actively adjusting to address these concerns. We are monitoring repeat give back patterns through reporting. We'll be reaching out directly when we see recurring patterns to understand what's driving them to align expectations. We're strengthening confirmation expectations for high profile accounts, setting clearer customer boundaries when work cannot realistically be covered. We're being more selective about new customer acquisition and lengthening the amount of time between when a service request is blasted out and when it is assigned. This is being done to allow you the time to have that intentional commitment. Finally, balancing the level of who is being assigned. We're not saying yes to every opportunity. We are working to align new customer growth with geographic coverage strengths, virtual acceptance trends, and provider capacity. This aligns with an exciting announcement. I'm pleased to introduce Melissa Dykma, who has joined our team with a focus on strategic growth. Her role centers on attracting customers that align with our values and the types of work our providers want to engage in. We feel this is an important step in shaping more intentional future for his sign. You can learn more about Melissa by going to the About portion on our website. Another area that we are looking at is increasing virtual work assignments, actively encouraging customers to consider virtual work assignments when appropriate, educating customers on cost, flexibility of virtual services, and structuring proposals to include virtual options where possible. However, many customers still require on-site coverage, and we have an obligation to meet those needs as well. So balancing these realities is an ongoing effort. Our job is to promote virtual where feasible, maintain strong on-site coverage where required, and balance provider preferences and contractual obligations. That balance requires partnership. As we look ahead, our focus is on building systems, processes, and partnerships that are sustainable, not just for today's volume, but where we're headed in the future. Growth is only meaningful if it's supported by clarity, consistency, and trust. My vantage point at HitSign, growth means continuing to invest in the right tools to use Get. We're also being more intentional about the customers we work with, the services we accept. That means clearly understanding our boundaries, recognizing that there is some work we simply can't cover, and promoting virtual services over on-site whenever possible. Finally, setting clear expectations for all parties to operate efficiently. Hosting events like this town hall is an important step bridging any gaps between expectations and reality by hearing from our provider. Reliability, communication, and follow-through are foundational to everything we do. When those elements are strong, it allows us to protect our customer relationships, expand opportunities, and create more stable and desirable work for our provider community. We value our partnership with you, and we see you as an essential part of the operational ecosystem this time moving forward. Thank you for the professionalism, flexibility, and commitment you bring to this work. We're focused on building a structure that works better for everyone now and in the future. With that, I will return this to our moderator, Melanie Blue.
Thank you, Matt, for that transparency and perspective. Next, I'd like to introduce our last panelist, Amber Haynes, our accessibility manager, who will share updates from the team and walk through some important processes. Amber, you have our attention.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. We appreciate your time and your continued partnership as we grow and evolve. As Brian and Matt mentioned, our growth surprised even us this past year. We had to navigate the ins and outs of a new system, figure out how to set up our inbox for the thousands of emails we were sending and receiving. Sorry about that, interpreters. And there were times when we relied on all of you to help improve our processes or even make sure that they were working. And we can't thank you enough for your willingness to support us. I want to start with a few quick A-Team updates, as I know our providers like to know who they're talking to each day. Danielle has stepped into her new role as Assistant Accessibility Manager, and we're really excited about the leadership and support she brings. I also want to give a shout out to Kathleen for her continued contributions. And lastly, we have recently welcomed a new A-Team member, Jamie. Many of you also know Monica. She's still with HitSign as well. She's just working in a different, more behind the scenes role. If you would like to see their beautiful faces and read their bios, you can go to our website to learn a little bit more about them. I also want to take a moment to recognize the A-Team. They work really hard to support everyone, often behind the scenes and even outside of regular hours. As you can see, we are still a small team, but I feel like we're pretty mighty. Considering the growth that we have experienced, we have recently implemented an after-hour response policy. We're being more intentional about work-life balance so the team can stay energized and effective. Messages that come in after hours are still reviewed, but we prioritize responses based on urgency. So things like assignments happening within the next 24 hours, active technical issues, or anything that could prevent a service from happening, we deal with. More general messages or future scheduling items are handled the next business day. If you have additional questions about our after-hour policy, we have a web page dedicated to this on our website. Next, I would like to address the topic of assigning providers who have expressed interest or accepted assignments in USCED. Since we have transitioned to USCED, this has been a common question from our providers. One thing we want to be clear about, because we know this can sometimes be confusing or frustrating, is how our providers are selected for assignments. Jobs are not first come, first served, and that's intentional. Our goal isn't just to fill a spot quickly, but to make sure we're matching the right provider with the right assignment. Even when we are competing with other agencies, we remain mindful of assigning the correct provider for that assignment. I would also like to note that our team works on confirmations around the clock. And there are times where there is a delay in us confirming. We have many customers that we have to seek approval of the confirmation, so we're unable to confirm until we receive that communication from them. There are a lot of factors that go into these decisions, such as qualifications, certifications, experience, availability, and the specific needs of the customer or consumer. Please know that this is not about favoritism. It's about quality, consistency, and setting everyone up for success. We also have a new tool that was created by our wonderful IT department that helps us to better see provider schedules. So we can be thoughtful as a team about those assignment offers and support a balanced workload for you as well. And if you express interest in a job and you're not selected, please know that's not a reflection of your value or standing with his sign. It's often just about alignment for that particular assignment at that moment. Lastly, I want to address your questions related to securing and obtaining prep materials because it directly impacts your ability to do your best work. We care deeply about supporting your ability to be prepared for each assignment. Our team does request prep materials from customers for all of our requests. And when we receive them, we share them with you as quickly as we can. That said, there are times when customers don't have materials available, or they're unwilling to send them, or they don't even respond to the many emails that we send. While we can't always control that, we are advocating for each assignment and all of you. We're committed to continuing to ask, follow up on, and share whatever information we receive. I want to end by saying how grateful we are for the professionalism, flexibility, and dedication our providers bring each day. We truly couldn't do this without you. As for our team, the A team, and all of his sign, we're constantly improving, adapting, and growing, and we're so proud to have all of you by our side and part of this exciting journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber, for walking us through those updates and for the clarity that you provided around processes, preparation, and support. We really appreciate the transparency from the accessibility team and the work that goes into supporting both our service providers and our customers every day. We're now going to move into the Q&A portion of today's town hall. Again, thank you to everyone who took the time to submit questions in advance. Your feedback really helped to shape today's discussion. So we received a number of thoughtful questions from our service providers, many centered around similar themes. So we've grouped them to ensure we address the core concerns clearly and efficiently. We may not get around to every individual question verbatim, but we worked to address the substance behind them. We'll focus on themes and processes rather than individual cases or specific customer details. If your question involved a unique situation, then we would need to follow up offline. We want this to be a professional, respectful, and productive space. So to keep things moving and ensure clarity, responses will be shared by the panelists best positioned to address each topic. So now that my group of panelists have joined me on screen, let's begin with one of the more common themes that we received around virtual interpreting services. So we received several questions about virtual interpreting services, which we call VIS assignments, regarding access and job distribution, including how assignments are filtered in the portal, why they appear to fill so quickly, and how best fit is determined when multiple qualified service providers are available. Amber, can you walk us through how VIS assignments are structured and how staffing decisions are made?
Of course. So to expand a bit on how assignments are structured from a system standpoint, virtual assignments in USCED are released based on defined criteria, such as certification, licensure, where required, availability settings, service preferences, and any customer-specific requirements. When those criteria are met, notifications go out to all of those qualified service providers at the same time. Because that process is automated and real-time assignments can sometimes be accepted within seconds. I do want to note that even if it's accepted, it has to still be confirmed by our team manually. The timing reflects how the system releases opportunities, not favoritism or pre-selection. It's also important to clarify that assignment distribution is not purely first come, first served. When multiple qualified providers are available, and there have been a lot for all of these assignments that we have, we consider alignment factors such as experience, customer preferences, performance history, and the specific needs of the assignment. And we have that cool tool that our IT department created as well. In high volume accounts, response time can influence outcomes, but speed alone does not determine placement. Our goal is always thoughtful matching aligned with the customer requirements and service quality. We also encourage all of you to keep your availability, credentials, and preferences updated in USCAD, since those settings directly impact notification eligibility. And of course, we're always looking at ways to make virtual identification easier within the portal.
Okay, thank you, Amber, for explaining that. A related question that was focused on our virtual work is virtual on-call or on-demand opportunities. Matt, can you speak to how those are structured and whether growth is anticipated in that area?
Yeah, of course, Melanie. So virtual on-call services are structured differently than open VIS assignments. These arrangements are tied to specific customer contracts that define response expectations, availability windows, and minimums as well. On-call work is typically pre-staffed with a designated pool of service providers who agree to those parameters. In terms of growth, we are certainly pursuing additional VIS and on-demand agreements. However, expansion depends entirely on customer demand and contract feasibility. So as new opportunities develop, we will certainly communicate eligibility and participation criteria clearly.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Well, while we're talking about VIS, there was also a question about the 1 hour VIS minimum and whether that might possibly change to 2 hours, which some consider standard in the profession. How is that policy determined?
Sure. So the 1 hour VIS minimum is directly tied to how services are priced and contracted with customers. So minimum billing structures are negotiated as part of each agreement. And while some organizations operate with different minimums, adjustments must align with customer contracts and pricing sustainability. So we do periodically review service structures, including those minimums. However, any change would require alignment with contractual agreements and reimbursement models. Changes to minimums cannot be made unilaterally without customer agreement, as that would directly affect contract compliance and pricing structures. So there's no change being announced today, but it does remain part of ongoing evaluation.
Thank you, Matt. There were also questions about USCAD notifications, how they work, and how system logic affects assignment outcomes. Amber, you spoke about that a little bit, but can you expand?
Sure. USCAD operates based on predefined criteria configured to align with the customer requirements. So things like the certifications, the licensures that we need on file, and things like that. Notifications are then triggered when the assignment parameters match a service provider's qualifications and also your availability. The system is rule-based and applied consistently. It does not rank or prioritize providers outside of those defined criteria.
Thank you for explaining. Um, Moving on to another topic, we received a couple of questions about compensation and rate structure, including market comparisons, cost of living considerations, and whether rate increases are being considered. Matt, can you speak to that?
Sure, Melanie. So, look, we recognize that compensation is deeply personal and directly impacts how service providers prioritize their work. Compensation decisions are tied directly to customer contracts, reimbursement structures, and overall sustainability of service delivery. We periodically evaluate rates based on market conditions and contract viability. However, adjustments they must align with customer pricing agreements and long-term business stability. So, for example, the increase we had in 2022 reflected adjustments that were feasible at that time based on customer agreements. There's no blanket rate increase being announced today. Compensation structures are reviewed strategically, they're not ignored. Rate structures vary depending on contract types and service models. We will continuously assess our positioning in the market. It's our responsibility to balance competitive positioning with operational sustainability.
Okay, thank you for sharing those insights. When it comes to other compensation matters, we received a question about medical credential differentials or transportation reimbursements. How does that factor, Matt?
We recognize that credentials such as CCHI reflect additional professional investment and specialization from the providers. And when evaluating credential-based differentials, we must consider whether customer contracts support differentiated billing for those services. So in cases where customers specifically require medical certification, pricing reflects that structure. Implementing a universal medical differential across all assignments would require alignment with customer billing models. That remains part of broader compensation. As for transportation, service providers operate as independent contractors. So travel expenses are generally responsibility of the contractor unless reimbursement is explicitly authorized within a customer agreement. When we do have this transportation reimbursement and it's approved by a customer, that is passed on directly to providers.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's shift gears just a little bit and talk a little bit about communication. That was another consistent theme. Amber, service providers asked how his sign defines timely communication and what expectations should there be around after hours response times.
Sure. So when we talk about timely communication, we mean acknowledgement within business hours and proactive updates when changes occur. So our business hours are 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Service providers can expect prompt responses from the A team. And if you communicate with us throughout that time, you probably know that we are pretty speedy. After hours, urgent matters should be directed to our designated emergency contact process. Our after hours policy is available online and will be placed in the chat as well.
Thanks for sharing that. And we appreciate that information being posted. What about other policies? If there are policies that are updated or clarified, how are those typically communicated to service providers?
Sure. So for material policy updates, we communicate directly via email broadcast. Any updates that affect USCED functionality are reflected within the system. In some cases, clarifications are addressed during town halls like this or formal announcements. And we would include those updates in the ICSA or Independent Contractor Service Agreement. Our goal is always to centralize policy communication so service providers know exactly where to find current guidance. Of course, if there's any uncertainty, you can reach out to us for clarification.
Thanks for that. Let's shift a little bit to some more industry-related topics. Matt, we received a question about the Maryland Educational Interpreter licensure updates. Are there any updates with that?
So we monitor developments regarding the Maryland Educational Interpreter licensure. At this time, there are no new regulatory updates to announce. Of course, if requirements change, we will communicate promptly so service providers can plan accordingly.
Sounds good. We will stay tuned. So let's shift. We don't want to leave Ryan out of the conversation. So let's talk a little bit more about leadership. So, Brian, from a leadership perspective, how do we balance customer expectations with service provider readiness and sustainability?
Well, thanks, Melanie. I was kind of wondering, maybe I dropped off the call accidentally or something. So that's a really good question. Basically, over the last 2 years, balancing customer expectations with your financial and professional needs has not just become harder and harder. It's become pretty much impossible. The A team was, I don't know if I could say they were thriving. They were definitely trying to survive for sure. The 150% growth of our monthly hours, the ransomware, the migration to the new system, accompanied with our inability to successfully build the scheduling team, it really prevented us from doing the things that we wanted to do. But now that we're on USCHED, now that we can breathe a little bit, now that we've automated much of what we were manually doing as it applies to customer and state compliancy, with these recent hirings, we're finally in a position where the A team can breathe, and instead of working to survive, they can thrive. As a management team, we can now look at how we're doing things and reorganizing to support those activities. And the hiring of Matthew and Melissa and the new position for Monica are examples of those changes that have been made to support the efforts that affect you every day. As a result of these staffing and system changes, the A team is now able to take the time to thoughtfully consider who is the best fit, and for a lack of a better term, to spread the wealth. We're not just assigning things blindly and in haste as we were because we had to. While at the same time, they're able to assure that the deaf clients have their needs met and the paying customers are happy. The give back trend that Matt referenced earlier is something that we continue to monitor. And I have to say, it's been a dark spot in a bright future for us and for our service providers. But once again, this is an opportunity to talk to you, our service providers, and to let you know about some of the things that you do that have a negative and a positive impact on us.
Well, thank you for that, Brian. Well, while we're talking about transparency, several service providers asked how feedback is handled and how they can feel confident that raising concerns doesn't result in retaliation. How would you respond to that?
So I kind of alluded to that earlier. If we don't know something's broken, we can't fix it. I get it. I understand that speaking up can be uncomfortable, but we can't fix it if we don't know it's broken. I can honestly say I'm not aware of any type of retaliation occurring at his sign. Everyone that works here knows that that's just not tolerated. We simply must know what's going on with you. But you must also realize that, as was mentioned in the response to the previous question, there not only needs to be a balance between your expectations as one of the hundreds of service providers at his sign, but also with the needs of our customers. Your suggestions may be the best thing since sliced cheese as it relates for you, but it may or may not work out for everyone, including the other service providers, his sign, or even the customers. A few years ago, we received feedback from some service providers in a high-risk environment. We worked with the customer, we obtained a fee increase, and we passed on 100% of that fee increase to the service providers that were working for that customer in that high-risk environment. This is a really good example of where we've heard feedback of what people had to say, and it was successful. There's been many times Amber was just talking, or Matt was just talking about the request for travel fees. We do that all of the time. You are probably never aware of what we do and try but fail, because those things don't benefit you positively. The other thing to keep your privacy is, I mentioned that you can go to our website and provide anonymous feedback using the Ask His Sign form. And you can always reach out to any of us. I can tell you that the management team, we talk about different things at different times. And if someone asks for it to be confidential, there's no names mentioned.
Thank you for explaining that, Brian. We appreciate that. So that's from an agency perspective. Thinking about the industry, we received some questions about some of the discussions within RID. Do you have any comments on what's going on?
Well, that's a big can of worms. Um, as you can imagine, we hear a lot of things. We're aware of ongoing conversations in the interpreting community as well as those within RID, issues such as the CEO search, the testing concerns, and the advancement of the nationwide acceptance of the BEI. In all of those things, we haven't been asked to provide feedback or our opinion, so we're monitoring them just like you are. So you know, we have updated our scheduling system to include the various levels of BEI and have also updated our compliancy checking to mirror where BEI is accepted. So when things happen, we do make changes, we apply them across the board, and all of you are treated the same.
Thank you for that, Brian. Appreciate it. Now, on a personal note, we know you like to share personal stories. So many people, as you mentioned, some of the interpreters are a little newer to his sign. Many may not know that you're actually hard of hearing and that ASL interpreters are part of your family. How has that shaped the way that you lead his sign?
You should have never asked me that question because I still have 14 minutes left.
Uh-oh.
Now, so you can read a little bit of it on our story on the website, but just to give you a short summary, I in 1980 I was in high school and I had been faking my way through the hearing tests because they would give you a headset and I would see people raising their hands. And so I raised my hands like everybody else. And when I was a senior, they put me in a booth and they ended up finding out that I had a 50% hearing loss and answered a lot of questions as to why I had the TV loud and the radio loud and everything loud. But it really impacted me a lot because I became reliant on using a hearing aid. I didn't use interpreters. Honestly, I don't think at that time there was probably a single interpreter in the state of South Dakota. But when I met Christina, she had an interest in sign language. And when I lost my job in Omaha, Nebraska, we started talking about, I don't think we even knew what interpreters were, but we started talking about her someday doing something with sign language. So it was pretty cool because as we were looking at where we would want to live and to move to, because I had a lot of different job offers, we focused on Northern California because there was a large deaf community there. Christina got started and started taking classes, ended up working in a school, and really, I can remember driving down the road and Christina sitting with her legs crossed and reading an ASL book as we're going up to Napa or we're driving around. And she just fell in love with it. She continued taking classes. She continued getting involved in it. When we had children, we were pretty involved and interactive with the deaf community. I mentioned I like telling stories. I know I've only been 2 minutes so far. One of the funniest things that has ever happened to us, because we're always interacting with the deaf community, is we met a deaf couple somewhere and we were talking to them and they're just looking at us so strange. They're like, you guys are just so familiar. We just know you. Well, what we ended up finally discovering is they had the Snipe family are friends of ours, and they had a birthday party at our house, but we weren't there. We were somewhere else. And so they saw our pictures, our photos on the wall. And so we finally figured out that because of our interaction with the deaf community and having a birthday party at our house, um, they had seen pictures of us. And so it's just kind of cool how that deaf community, how the interactions with the deaf community has really, um, it's just wildly influenced our lives. My son, who is on here, is an interpreter. My wife, as you know, Christina, is an interpreter, and our daughter is fluent. We scuba dive. So people always ask us what the heck we're doing when we're underneath the water because we're signing to each other and talking about all of the stuff that we're seeing. It has really, it's been just an amazing blessing. Just the friendships that we've created, the opportunities to just be involved in this has been absolutely wonderful.
Thank you for sharing that, Brian. Appreciate that. Well, that concludes this portion of our meeting with the Q&A. Again, I'd like to thank our panelists, Brian, Matt, and Amber for your presentations this evening. Thank you very much. As we close, I really want to sincerely thank our service providers for taking the time to attend this evening. Your engagement, your questions, and your partnership truly matter. We also want to acknowledge and express our appreciation for our ASL interpreter team this evening. Thank you for your professionalism and preparation. We're also grateful to our His Sign team who worked tirelessly behind the scenes to make this event successful. We recognize there may be more additional questions, maybe some that were triggered by some of the presentations. If something wasn't addressed tonight, we encourage you to keep the conversation going by submitting your questions through the new form that Brian announced, Ask His Sign. Questions and answers from tonight's forum will be, as well as future responses, will be posted in an online question library, and that will be released shortly. You'll receive a brief survey following this session. Please take a few minutes to complete it. Your feedback helps us to improve and ensures that town halls like these remain valuable and productive. Finally, we invite you to stay connected with us beyond tonight. Follow us on our social platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn for updates on processes, opportunities, and provider communications. Again, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you and look forward to continuing this work together. Have a great evening, everyone.
See ya.